So, a few of you guys pointed out a mistake I made in the last video. My behavior was stinky, and I called this guy Blinky. He's actually Clyde, but put that aside, because they switched the names of the villains in these games! There's actually an interesting point I'm getting to here. You see, for a while, there was an actual confusion between the names of Blinky and Clyde. This may come as a surprise for even old school fans, since they seem to get it more or less right in the major arcade releases back in the day. And with the problem being fixed for about a decade and a half, it hardly finds its way into conversation. Until dipshits like me show up. You see, I'm a decrepit-ass 28-year-old. My formative memories with this hockey puck of a man were smack dab in the middle of this era. And I even remember thinking this was a retcon that Namco was specifically trying to make, only to be even more confused when finding out they seemingly gave up on said retcon later on. But Pac-Man World 2 wasn't the first time they made this mistake, and it wouldn't be the last either. So where did this whole issue even come from? Well, I've heard a lot of people think it came from the old Hanna-Barbera show from 1982, and I can see why they think that. In the show, Clyde is the leader of the Ghost Gang, and on top of that, theirs and Blinky's entire personalities seem to be swapped.
Fall in, men! Inky!
Pinky.
Blinky!
Clyde!
Let's chomp Pac-Man before he can hide!
While their names and colors are the same as the games here, I do wonder if this characterization switch of the two is what started the confusion in the public anyway. You'd think most people playing the game would look at Blinky as the one in charge, with him being the biggest threat and all. But it honestly seems like Clyde was being built up as the leader, unless I'm mistaken. The game Pac-Land continued with this interpretation, with Clyde looking angry and Blinky just looking a little sad. Bitch can't cruise Elroy in this environment! But I can already tell you're gonna say the same thing my therapist tells me. Pac-Land was just an interpretation of the Hanna-Barbera show. However, other games in this era also went with Clyde as the boss. Literally. On the bevel outside of Pac-Mania's cabinet, they had little descriptions of each character. And this game also puts Clyde in charge. But even after that, I could just see it being growing pains for the series, and them not knowing exactly what these characters' personalities are. But then 1996 happened, and this is where the confusion really started. Namco was releasing arcade compilations at the time, and Volume 2 featured Pac-Man, as well as my beloved Pac-Man arrangement. Shoutouts to my favorite ghost in the gang, Kinky. Don't ask what he does in his free time. And what's interesting to me is they even went back and changed the ROM of the original to change their names around, which is one of the reasons why I thought this was a retcon back in the day. Why else would they change an already completed game unless they had a reason to? And this brings us to the era I ate my first Pac pellet in, the Pac-Man World era. So despite what some people may think, all three Pac-Man World games have this era tied to them. The second and third games are pretty self-explanatory, with levels being named after them in 2, and fully voiced cutscenes referring to them by the wrong names in 3.
No one can lock the Big Red in a cage and expect to remain unthrown in a swirly vortex thing. No, sir.
Whoa, we shouldn't have messed with you, Clyde.
However, the original was a much more simple story, and doesn't even refer to any of the Ghost Gang by their names. In-game, that is! This game had a commercial that was just peak 90s. And if you look right here, well, that's just the old switcheroo right in plain sight. I would not trust these chuckle fucks anywhere near my furniture. Pac-Man World 2 is usually brought up when people talk about this whole deal, and that makes sense. You see it front and center for the first boss. And this wasn't some compilation disc or promotional video either. This is straight up in their big budget game for the time. Honestly, it's why I thought it was more so a retcon than a mistake as a kid. How does a whole ass video game company do this on accident? But like I was saying, it's even weirder in Pac-Man World 3 since that game's voice acted.
No one's heard of our friends Blinky and Clyde.
But I guess if they both refer to themselves as each other, maybe they're both in on it.
Trade house keys, each other's.
Yep.
The series mostly pulled its head out of its ass after Pac-Man World 3, and by Pac-Man World Rally, they were both back to their original names, for the most part. Here's a few notable ones I found funny. In 2012, Wreck-It Ralph released, and look who's leading the villains meetup here, none other than Clyde. I wonder if they chose him since he was kind of like the leader back in the day, or with Clyde being primarily seen as the bumbling one in most lore, he may have been the choice since he'd be seemingly the least evil of the group.
This edible ain't shit.
Either way, while no one refers to him by name in the movie, the subtitles refer to him as Blinky as well.
Oh, look, there's Clyde.
Blinky! Hell, there's even an official webcomic based off the character Bravo Man, and in one chapter, he even interviews Clyde asking about this whole rigmarole. There were a few other instances here and there, but it was mostly stamped out by the early to mid 2010s. But still, what even caused this muddling of monikers anyway? Well, the culprit seems to stem all the way back in 1992, it seems. This right here. This is the picture that caused so much trouble for the next 20 years. This is the official Pac-Man characters and logo style guide from Namco themselves, released in 1992. The entire thing is saved on the Internet Archive if you want to check it out, and I'd recommend it. It's neat to see older interpretations of these characters, down to the exact shades of colors they wanted them portrayed as. They seem so simple and happy, back from a time when Miss Pac-Man wasn't trapped in the Act Games gulag. Anyway, if you take a look at the Ghost Gang over here, you can see that Blinky and Clyde's identities are indeed swapped, colors and all. So, yeah, I think the Pac historians are right on the money here. The timeline all adds up. You know, I honestly wonder if this right here was a mistake on the designer's end, but then everyone else in the company was like, I guess we ripping Blinkies now, pass that shit! So, what's your guys' thoughts on this whole kerfuffle? Did any of you grow up with the wrong names hammered in your heads like me? Or maybe you have memories of another time this error happened that I didn't bring up in this video. Did I get anything wrong? That would be in character for me. Anyway, let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching!